Okay, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And we're so excited to have you with us today for another session of our Myeloma Financial Coach chapter. My name is Audrey Burton-Bethke, and I am the Myeloma Community Director. And I will be introducing our chapter head, Diahanna Vallentine, in just a little. Again, we appreciate you sharing this virtual time with us. Let me just pull up the slides here. I always think you have it ready and then you don't. All right. Today's session is going to be on estate planning. We are recording this event, and 24 to 48 hours after the event, all registrants will receive a recording of this meeting as well as the slides that are shared. A big thank you to our sponsors, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Karyopharm Therapeutics, and Oncopeptides. As always, it is my pleasure to introduce our chapter head, Myeloma Financial Coach Diahanna Vallentine, BCPA. She came to me with this topic of estate planning in mind, and she admitted it would be maybe an uncomfortable topic or something that isn't normally discussed, but she was adamant about the importance of this topic, and I thought it was a great idea, which is why why I'm excited to hear her present on it today. We again appreciate each of you taking the time to learn about this topic with us. Diahanna Vallentine is a myeloma coach specializing in financial help for multiple myeloma patients. She she is a professional financial consultant and former caregiver of her husband who was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Diahanna perfectly understands the financial issues facing you today. As I mentioned, today's topic will be the importance of estate planning for everyone. As Diahanna likes to say, if you don't have an estate plan, the state has one for you. As a reminder, the information is general information only, so please seek legal advice from an estate attorney in your state for more information and before making decisions. Diahanna, I'd like to turn the time now over to you. Oh, I think you're muted, Diahanna. Let's see. There we go.
Thank you, Audrey. Hello, everyone. Again, thank you for taking the time of a beautiful afternoon here in Louisville, Kentucky, to share your time with us. This is an important topic. And again, I can only stress how important it is because of some of the things that I ran into. And we have a tendency to spend more time planning for vacations, planning for building a new house, planning for all these other things, but we fail to plan for in the event something were to happen to us, or plan to make sure that our families can continue the way in their lifestyle they're accustomed to. We don't plan to have someone appointed to make financial decisions for us if we can't make them on our behalf. And it's a topic I think has become even more relevant in the COVID era because we just never know. And so I just wanted to go over a lot of the topics with everyone and explain what it means, how important it is, and the steps you can take to get this established and to give yourself a sense of, I got it done. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay, on to the next one. So according to a survey done by AARP, less than 60% of people have an estate plan or a basic will. And we've heard of a lot of people like Prince, James Brown, some of these big name people you would thought have attorneys around them all the time would have had an estate plan. And it's not uncommon for people with money. And it's not necessarily a person with money who needs it. In fact, if you're 18 years old, you should have a basic estate plan, even if that means just a will. Most people have a home or a car or something. You need to have a will. So preparing for end of life isn't a fun thing to do, but it's very necessary. The truth is, if you are 18 years old, you should have at least a will in place. For others with assets or a home or several homes, it's even more necessary and it's even more complicated. We as humans have a tendency to procrastinate when it comes to issues of illness and or death, but once personal wishes are made known, it frees you up to focus on other things. Let's review what an estate is and what estate planning entails. Next, please. An estate is the character or what you have and the duration of a person's ownership of land and or possessions and other assets they have controlling interest in or outright own, minus any liabilities. So simply put, everything you own minus everything you owe. Estate planning is a process of understanding your healthcare wishes if you cannot make them on your own, as well as how you want your finances handled in your behalf if you are incapacitated, and then how you want your property distributed at your death. There are very precise questions and steps you must work through in order to have a complete plan that will run smoothly when activated. Next, please. Some of the key questions you need to ask when you're starting to put together everything for an estate plan is, if you're incapacitated, who do you want to make decisions on your behalf? You need to make sure that the person you think about or decide to put in writing on a legal form are willing, able, and capable of following through with your wishes. Who do I want to take care of your minor children or older dependent children who may be disabled? Do you have thoughts about a funeral and burial? How do you want that handled? Things are not as traditional as they used to be. A lot of times, especially in this era, funerals have changed, and people are looking at celebrations of life, like I did with my husband, and they take not necessarily within a few days after death. They usually can last 2, 3, maybe even start several months after the passing. So you want to make sure all of your wishes and desires are put in paper. If you're unable to make your own decisions, who do you want making medical decisions for you? Very important. Find somebody who's capable in a time of stress, of mental stress, that can follow through with those plans and make sure those plans are communicated with that person. They know where those documents are, and that the doctor and the hospital or the treatment facilities you go to have those things on hand as well. Who do you want making financial decisions for you? Make sure it's somebody you trust, because you can have a power of attorney in place, but that person may make decisions that you may not want them to have or to make. Next slide, please. There are generally 5 steps to financial planning, and this will allow you to make a thorough and complete plan. And this is for anyone, whether it's a basic estate plan or it becomes very, very complicated, depending on if there's mixed families, or if you have other people you need to take care of, if you have estate property in different states. All of these things can be handled within these 5 steps. Next slide. First of all, you need to define your estate. Make a list of all your property. Now, we're talking about property. Property doesn't just mean your home. Property can mean any assets you may own, your car, CDs, checking accounts, savings accounts. If you have any type of property, such as if you have a vacation property that you only own partial rights in, that if you have a deed to that, that is part of your estate. Any and everything where your name is on, can be on, is part of your estate. When you do that, you need to determine the value of your property. If you have homes, cars, a lot of those things can be easily evaluated. You can have somebody come in and do this appraisal of your home to get a value of that. If you have statements of your assets, whether through 401k, pension plans, things like that, you can easily access the value of those. And then you need to determine sentimental value on other property, such as maybe you have antiques, or you may have artwork that cannot be appraised. It may not have a real street value, but have sentimental value. When you start dividing these things up among family members, and you want to be as close to evenly dividing your property among them, that's an easy way to do it, based on a sentimental value. Now then, look at your property. How is it titled? This is a really easy way, if you have a fairly easy estate, to prevent yourself from having to go to an estate attorney where it would cost you quite a bit more money. So if you have a simple estate, you have checking accounts, savings accounts, um, even you have brokerage accounts that are not in IRAs. It's very easy to have payable on death. That means if something were to happen to you, that at your death, it stays outside of your state, it goes over to that person. They can have access to it. Now, if you have a checking or savings account, you can put another person's name on there, transfer on death, or payable on death, or they can be joint owners. As joint owners, again, you might be mindful of this. In a checking account, you have your name and another person's name on there. They have ownership of that property, which means they can go in and clean you out. So again, make sure the person you have titled on any of your things that you want to manage in your behalf are people you trust. And that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a family member. Um, Check around, ask people how they handle theirs. Ask someone at the bank. They handle these types of accounts all the time. Who do they normally see handling people's accounts without them being specific? They won't do that, share that information. But ask them who would they refer someone to if you didn't want a family member to handle that. The next slide, please. There are three common ways to own property. Individual ownership, your name is on it only. That is strictly all of your estate. Joint ownership, that's joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. Tenants in common, if there have three or four people name on something, they all have the same amount of ownership of that property. And then by contract is as if you have um, let's say a bill of right, a bill of sale, or a home has or investment property has it's by a contract, so it has the ownership on that title, like with a deed. Next slide, please. Are you financially responsible for other people? Now, this is when you need to start thinking about how you want your estate to be handled. Who do you want those estate assets to go to, and can that person that's going to, can they actually handle them? Are they a minor? Are they someone who's disabled? They need those assets to be able to, so you can make sure they're taken care of. If it's a minor child that you're responsible for, you might want to start thinking about guardianship. Who's going to be the guardian of that child in if something were to happen to you? And you might want to make sure that person's able to fulfill those duties as a guardian, because there's a lot of responsibility for that. That guardian would be appointed through the court. It's a legal document, and you want to make sure that if there's assets that they need to access in order to take care of that guardian, that is actually going to that guardian. Again, trust is paramount in who you name as a guardian of your children. Make sure the person as a guardian will raise them the way you want them to be raised. That's very important. And make sure that if that person cannot or unwilling to do it, then you can find another person that can do that in their behalf or in your behalf. Do you have an adult child with a disability who has to be taken care of for the rest of their life? This is when it's very important to maybe consider a trust that could take care of that disabled person. That's when you need to speak to a trust attorney. And when I say a trust and estate attorney, it's not someone who just handles a will every once in a while. I'm talking about someone who that is their specialty. They handle estate and trust every day. They don't do criminal law or those types of things. They are concentrating on estate law. They will know the latest estate laws. They will know the best type of trust, because there are so many of them that are going to be pertinent and relevant for your type of estate plan, for the type of entitlement that you need. The next slide, please. Another step 3, which estate planning documents do you need? We've kind of talked about those. There are different documents that you might consider when planning for your estate. Though the principles of estate planning are the same in every state, you need to be aware that state laws can differ. When it comes to property rights of spouses, the rights of children to inherit, and estate inheritance taxes. Also, each state has its own set of allowed probate avoidance methods. You will need to know your state's rules before you can do effective, efficient estate planning. And keep in mind, if you have a home, let's say a home in Kentucky and another home in New York or a home in Nevada and a home in Wyoming, you need to be aware of the state laws for both of those estates. Um, if you go to www.nolo.com, that'll give you state-specific estate laws. State-specific estate laws. Very important. I would suggest everyone jot that down. Next slide, please. Wills. Basic estate planning is a will. And it's the one thing that very, very few people actually take time to do. If you have like I said earlier, if you have a very basic need for a will, like you're 18 years old or you don't have very many assets, a will can manage your estates. The will spells out how you want your property distributed upon death. This is also a place where parents can name a guardian or minor children or adult children with developmental disabilities. Be aware that each state, again, has its own rules about how to create a valid will. There are three types of wills: written, it must be in writing, you must be of sound mind, and have it witnessed by an uninterested party and notarized. Uninterested party, which means that person does not have any financial interest in your possessions. Statutory will. Some states have a statutory form where you will fill in details of your estate plan. They cannot be customized. It's very strict and rigid. This is usually reserved for a very, very simple will. Oral. These are very limited in almost every single state, and they are allowed in unusual circumstances only. And you don't want to get to the situation where that's the only thing you have, because it may not be valid. And then you have room for people to challenge that argument because they may not have been on hand to witness it. So it's a very messy thing to do. And these are usually on one's deathbed. Um, I will share this personally with you. My husband was in the hospital at his third stem cell transplant. He had some other complications, and they were putting him on life support. And he kept saying for years, "No, no, no, I don't want to. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to do it. I don't have to worry about that right now." And it was there when he was getting ready to be put on life support, and we had to hold that off in order for us to go to the attorney's office, run to the attorney's office, have him stop what he was doing, get the wills, get everything in, and come in and have him sign it. And it was very, 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 very difficult. It was emotionally traumatizing. And it's the one thing looking back that I wish he had done before. It was horrible. So I don't want anyone to be in that position. And that's why we're looking at wills and estates. Next slide, please. Steps to creating a will. Access your property and values that we went over earlier. Make sure you know the state's requirements again. Determine the type of will you will need and the complexity. Determine if you will need an attorney. If you have multiple families or have been divorced, you have children from both from a joint or multi-family, if you have estate property in more than one state, if you have a child, a minor child, if you have a disabled person that you're responsible for, if you're financially responsible for more than one household, this is the time to speak to a estate attorney. Identify an executor who will be appointed by the court to take care of your remaining financial obligations, including paying off debt and final tax preparation. The executor is also very important. They are going to make sure that they, in a timely fashion, gather all of the wills, all of the documents that you have, make sure that your estate things are in order, and they will file that through the court. They will be named executor, and they will handle the distribution of all of that property. If you have a family who has not spoken in a period of time, right now is a good time to start speaking to those people. If you are going to include them in the wills, it's a very good time to get these things out in the open, to talk to them so that there won't be fights or things later on. Those things will be very uncomfortable for everyone. Next slide, please. Identify witnesses who have no financial interest in the will to witness your will. Identify the guardians of minor children or adult children who are disabled. Again, they will be appointed in court. If you do not have guardians and if you do not have an executor, the court will name a person as guardian, and they will hold somebody to handle be an executive of your estate. I have found that a lot of attorneys will do this who's handling your estate. I personally see that as a conflict of interest. I have watched, I can't even tell you, hundreds and hundreds of these go through the court. And it's very disconcerting when you have a person who's charging you for an estate plan, who's also going to be managing how everything goes. A lot of times they'll put those things, if you have funds, they'll put those things in an account. And I, I just I just think those things should be separated. It's always best interest for you. And then, of course, periodically review your will and make sure it matches your property and your wishes. If you find that you have gotten a divorce, if you have more children, if you have bought more property, you need to make sure all of these things are included so that, and if things change, state laws change, you need to make sure that your estate plan is updated accordingly. You don't want to find out at the end that things weren't done, or your spouse finds out things weren't done, because the tax liabilities and the cost to have those things corrected and the time that it may take can be very expensive. The next slide, please. Trust. A trust is a document that allows you to hold assets for one or more beneficiaries. You can choose a trustee to oversee the assets in your trust, or you can act as your own trustee during your lifetime. There are living trusts created when you're alive and revocable. Revocable means you can change your mind about how that is handled, and may provide some tax benefits. Again, see your CPA, your tax advisor, and your state attorney regarding those tax benefits. A testamentary trust, usually it's in a will, and at the will at your death, the will triggers the trust. And it's used to provide for individuals who need help managing assets. That's when a guardianship, if they're minors, an executor will be taking care of those assets, and a trustee. Irrevocable trust cannot be changed or revoked once created. So this is very important when you have a very complex estate, when you're working with an estate attorney. Once that estate is drawn up, you need to make sure, and that trust is done, that it's going to, you got to think about this, and you got to look at all your estates and make sure that your assets, and make sure that it's going to go the way you want it to go, because once you sign off on that, it's irrevocable, which means you cannot go back and make changes to that. Very important you work with an estate attorney to make sure this trust is set up, and he's looking at everything, all of your wishes, all the needs for the people you're responsible for financially. There are so many other trusts available. There are charitable remainder trusts, crits, crats, cruts, all these things that you need to speak to your attorney about to make sure he has the one that's best for you. Make sure you work with a estate planning attorney who is experienced in your state's trust and tax laws. And you might find, if you have a property in another state, like a vacation home, you may find that attorney knows someone in that state, or he may be also registered that state. That's the ideal person to work with, if that estate attorney has can work in both states. The next slide, please. Powers of attorney for your financial affairs. It's very important, and don't wait till the last minute to do these. A power of attorney is established to allow someone you trust to make financial decisions for you when you may need help. This is a legal document, which means an attorney has to draw this up. A durable power of attorney takes effect when you sign it, and stays in effect even if you become incapacitated in the future, but ends when you pass away. At this point, the will takes over. So power of attorneys end at death, or if you were able to have a power of attorney change it, or you make it null and void. A springing power of attorney for financial affairs springs into effect only if you become incapacitated. So be aware of power of attorneys. I have unfortunately witnessed power of attorneys taking those documents, the general power of attorney, taking those documents into banks and cleaning out the accounts of the people they were supposed to be managing. And not a good situation. So again, the power of attorneys should be someone you trust, someone who understands how to handle finances, and is going to be doing something in your best interest. The next slide, please. Advanced healthcare directives. In the event there's a time when you cannot express your wishes about your medical care, an advanced healthcare directive is a legal document in which you can share your preferences and provide written instructions about your medical care. You can appoint someone you trust to make those medical decisions on your behalf. Very important. When you can't speak to your doctor about how you want care, if you're, let's say you're in a coma, incapacitated, you need to make sure the person who's going to make those decisions for you is a person you trust, a person who's willing to make those decisions under very, very difficult times and will carry through with your wishes. You need to make sure you have a copy of that. That person has a copy of it, and your doctor and the place you get treated has a copy of that as well. I always suggest to keep a lot of documents. Don't keep them in a safe deposit box because you are probably the only person on that safe deposit box. And it's not a good idea when you need them and you have the key. Nobody knows where the key is. No one can access that information. So make sure your doctor has one, because they will contact your primary care doctor. Make sure your hospital that you visit off the hospital that you attend or the treatment center has a copy for that as well. There are other resources available to you when making decisions about end of life care. Post or physician's orders for life sustaining treatment is a paradigm. It is a document that encourages patients to talk with their healthcare providers about the kind of care they want. These are state specific forms and may be called by another name in that state. For more information on POST, visit www.post.org. Next slide, please. Step 4, funeral and burial. This can be a very, very difficult subject to talk about for anyone. And this particular time when we're all going through COVID, and we see how it's very, uh, things can happen very quickly, very fast, unexpected. So all these things we've spoken about, the wills, trust, all these things are very, very important, but also funerals and burials. And if you already have something in plan, talk to your minister, talk to your financial advisor, talk to them about, how these, or your doctor, especially, how these things may have to change in this immediate situation we find ourselves in. As far as funeral and burials, a lot of people are waiting, even without and outside of pandemic times, are waiting to have celebration of life events when the first emotional scarring or difficulties are overcome, when you can think, breathe, and celebrate, look back and celebrate that person's life. And it may not be where you are, it may be in a different state, it may be a place that person really enjoyed being. And it could be the way you may want it. You may want to have a barbecue. You may want to have a circus. You may want to have anything, whatever you can think of, however you want to make sure these things are done the way you want them to be done. Think about it. Let people know what it's going to be about. When I did a celebration of life for my husband, it was 2 months after his death, and it was a barbecue. It was in the middle of the winter, but it was a barbecue, and it turned out to be one of the best things I ever did. I was able to think, appreciate the people that were there, and actually look back, and I was out of the fog and was able to enjoy it. And so it's a great way to look back. It's a great way for you to plan for those things and help people through grieving for yourself or for other people you may be managing these things in their behalf. Next slide, please. I'm sorry. Think about the costs associated with it as well when you're doing your burial planning, funeral planning. The big thing is, like I said before, review your estate plan periodically. I would suggest you do it every year. If you have a financial plan or if you're looking at your new budgeting for the next year, it's a great time to sit down. Take 5 or 10 minutes. Once you've gotten the big bulk of the work done, take 5 or 10 minutes, half hour, sit back, have a cup of coffee, and go back through it and make sure everything's done. Think about the things you may have purchased, things you may have gotten rid of that are no longer part of your estate. Think about if you've had to access assets and they're no longer there. Make sure you're going to update those things, so that later on those you wouldn't have to worry about it. Make sure your documents are in a safe place, but accessible, and that a loved one knows they exist, where they are, and can access them. Having one copy in a safe deposit box, like I said earlier, is not a good thing to have. It's actually a big problem to have because could take a week or two before the bank can have that taken care of. You have to wait for death certificates. You have to wait for somebody to come there and access that safe deposit box. Next slide. In summary, estate planning can be easy. It could be as easy as you getting online and doing your own simple will. Make sure you're aware of your state specific requirements regarding wills. Make sure your property is titled correctly. If you have old insurance policies or if you have assets out there you forgot you had, check with your state. There may be property that you forgotten you had. Make sure they're titled the way you want them titled. A lot of times you can avoid very expensive estate planning by making sure the beneficiaries are updated. All of those things are done properly. For more complex estates, an estate planning attorney is recommended, and I encourage you to have that done. Again, planning in advance allows you to take advantage of tax laws, as well as making sure every issue is covered. It also allows you to have peace of mind of knowing that your health care and financial issues will be handled in the manner that you desire. It also allows you to make sure that you're doing efficient tax planning because you don't want to leave a house to someone and they can't afford taxes and assets they can't afford the taxes, they have to sell that. So all of this planning takes care of all of those issues. Okay, that's a lot of information. I know it is. I tried to make it as simple, as easy as possible. And it can be simple if you don't wait till the very end. Take the emotion out of it and get it done. And don't worry about it again unless you're doing a periodic review, 5 or 10 minutes every year, just like you would do anything else. Let's spend more time taking care of those things that are very important to your family, and not spend more time planning for a vacation, because I know we're all looking at those now, hopefully planning for something, hopefully this year, but plan for this as well. If you need to contact me, here's a great place to contact me. I will respond to you within 24, 48 hours. It's myfinancialcoach@healthtree.org. Okay, thank you for joining us. I'm opening up for questions and answers. I would be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was awesome. I feel like you took a difficult situation or circumstance, I guess we would call it, and you explained it in a very clear way. I learned a lot, and I'm sure others did too. So let's get started with our question and answer session. For those that are unfamiliar with Zoom, below is a question and answer that you can open. I don't know why it's not pulling up, just a second. Okay. Somebody asked this earlier, and I apologize that I wasn't able to see this, but they said, are you able to stop the screen from jumping to different ways of viewing? It's making it harder to follow. I didn't even know that was happening. So I apologize. I'm not sure why that's happened. I'm pretty new at this as well, and I'm definitely not a tech girl. So I apologize that A, I couldn't see that because I was sharing the slides, and B, that I didn't notice it happen, that I wasn't aware of it happening. So thank you for letting us know about that. The time is now yours to ask questions about what Diana had to say. Our first question that's coming in says, is there a fee for your services? I can answer that. If you go through the Myeloma Financial Coach program, the Myeloma Coach program, there is zero fee to her services. So you are welcome to contact her. Diana, I don't know if you want to add a little bit more onto that.
Well, again, as a financial advisor, I've been one for over 20 years. I can help you, tell you the things that you need to get together and help you with some of the simple things so that once you go to your attorney, you'll be saving money because you won't have to do those things and he'll go back and forth and back and forth. And I can send you a document to say what things you need to get together. So whatever questions you have or concerns you may have, I would not be state specific. I can refer you to a state specific thing to worry about your wills and things like that. But I can help you get some of the basic things together and answer some of your basic questions. I would be glad to.
Great, thank you. Another question is, how often should you re-sign new powers of attorney? I understand if too old, they may not be recognized as valid.
Right. Powers of attorney are generally in effect unless you take them away, and unless there's a state law saying they terminate after a certain period of time. I do not think, at least here in Kentucky, they do not. If you find that that power of attorney is not who you want them to be, or you want to change it or add someone to that, you can do that at any time. Make sure your attorney though keeps a copy of that power of attorney as well. Generally, a lot of times they do, but I have found some attorneys give you the original, or you may not return it to him once it's notarized. But make sure that someone else has a copy of that power of attorney. And once it is changed, the other one is discarded. And
Oh,
wherever you have, if you give it to the bank, make sure they discard and update with a new one.
perfect. What do you think of Nolo Press to do a will? Looks like it's the name of a company, Nolo Press.
Yeah,
I could be
it's
wrong.
one of those online type of things. If you have a basic will, make sure that it's state specific, and that you go through that and make sure it's going to cover what your requirements are. If you have something that's more than just a very simple will, like you're 18 years old, you have a car, um, and you only have a checking or savings account, that could be fine. But if you have more of sizable assets, you might want to be aware of those basic wills. It may not give the tax treatment that you need in more of an estate planning sort of um, position, but some of those are good. I would maybe print it out and call a state attorney in your state and ask them what they thought about them, how they actually handle it, because the state laws change. And just because you print something out, looks like a really good document, you get it notarized or witnessed, it may not be what you need.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. Any tips for deciding on an executor?
Executor.
Yeah.
Executor.
Wait a
Don't want
second.
to executive.
Executor.
It's
I
a few
totally
letters
read
to
that
change it
wrong.
over.
My bad. Yes, definitely
The
executor.
executor of your estate should be someone who's going to manage the state accordingly, and make sure that they are of sound mind, who understands basic uh, business finance, because it could be very convoluted. You may have to go to court and do it, depending on how that is set up. You may have to go to court for guardianships to make sure that those things are updated every year. You have to go through court and give them an updated list. Make sure that if there's assets that need to be managed, such as a brokerage account, a 401k plan, make sure that that is going to be managed properly. And it's not going to be someone who say, well, I'm going to take this money and put it all in stocks, or this is very crucial when you find an executor to handle your estate, who's going to manage the estate accordingly, so that the funds won't be gone in 2 or 3 months because they just didn't know how to handle assets.
Mhm. That's good. She followed up and said if she has two adult children, is it better to make them co-executors or to pick one? Would not like to set up my children for difficulties in their relationship.
I understand. Um, Generally, when a person's doing an executor, if you have wills and everything stated out, the executor is going to be there at the end working with the estate attorney or going to court to make sure everything is done. And generally, executor has to make sure an estate is taken care of within generally 9 months of death. So it's not something that's going to go for a long time, but you want to make sure that everything is spelled out in your will. So the executors, and when they go to court, the executors making sure that everything is going to be handled according to the will, according to the way they're supposed to be processed. Now, executor can buy and sell and take manage assets. So make sure that person again is a person you trust or have the ability to do those things. And a lot of people think it has to be a family member. It doesn't. You can find there, if you have a state attorney, or someone separate from the person who may be doing your estate, or someone else who you trust, who maybe have the final financial acumen to manage that. And you can find someone else who do that on your behalf.
Great, thank you. How much assets make it worthwhile to create a trust?
Interesting. That's a very personal question. It depends on what the trust is supposed to be doing. What is the meaning of the trust? Is it for a child, a minor? Is that money going to be left for a minor? In that case, you need to have a trust established. And one of the biggest things, you can go to a trust attorney, pay whatever it is to have a trust established. One, two, three, big ones, small ones. And the one thing I found is people forget to fund the trust. You can have a trust here, but you didn't have that brokerage account with the trust identification number saying now it's part of the trust. Because if you don't fund your trust, you may as well have not have had anything done at all. That is so common. People say they get their trust documents saying, and they have the will done. This is what I want to have in the trust. This is where I want to go. This is what I wanted to do. But they forget to have those assets actually put into the trust. So when you talk about how much it costs or how much you need to have to put in a trust, it depends on what that trust is supposed to do. If it's for a minor, no matter what it is, it needs to go into a trust.
Thank you. This person says, I'd like to use the permanent cash value life insurance to set up my tax-free estate. What life insurance providers might do or do cover these diagnosed with smoldering myeloma?
So you already have a life insurance policy? Is that what I'm saying? I'm understanding?
I'm not sure. I'll read it one more time to see if we can figure
Okay.
it out. And if not, if we could have the person that entered this question just kind of clarify. Oh, they say no, they don't already have life insurance.
Okay, if you don't have life insurance and you have smoldering myeloma, it's going to be very difficult for you to get life insurance.
Mm,
Um, if you are still working, one of the best ways is to get on your group plan through your employer because they don't do underwriting for each individual person. If that is not an option, I'm sorry, but I struggle to find where you're going to be able to get insurance at this point, and it's at the point where my husband was trying to get insurance. That's how we found out he had myeloma. He was in the process doing a policy, and we found out he had, through his underwriting, that there was something wrong. And at that point, we could not find life insurance. Now, things do change. If you have something if you have cancer, some types of cancer, and I'll put that in quotes, and you're stable, or if you've been outside of a diagnosis considered remission for 5, 10 years, then you may be able to find insurance. Again, it will probably be very expensive. So is it going to be easy, or if it's even able for you to find a life insurance policy at this point outside of an employer plan, it'll be very, very difficult.
yeah, yeah. Thank you for your honesty with that.
Mhm.
I know it's not easy. Um, yeah, it's not always easy to figure out. I mean, everybody's situation is different, so it's
Right,
hard
right.
to. What should somebody do when they do not have any family or friend they can trust to act as power of attorney?
Well, um, if you go to church, your minister might be able to refer you to someone because they get questions like this all the time. Um, like I said, talk to your banker. If you have a banker you trust, ask them if there's people they refer to help in situations like this, and also ask your doctor. Sometimes your doctors will tell you, this, I've had this question, and here's some people that I refer people over to. They're generally professionals. You might want to, as you have a brokerage account, ask the broker if they have people who can manage those kind of things. That's a very, very difficult one if you don't have a family member or a friend that can manage the power of attorney, the basic everyday things that may need to be done. But it needs to be someone that is trustworthy and is able to do it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, okay, let me see if I can understand this question. Can you name someone as an executor and they not know that you've named them as executor? I think that's what this question is asking.
So my first question would be, why would they not know they're the executor? Is there a question in your mind as to whether you want them to actually perform those duties? If they're an executor, you need to make sure they know that, because you just never know when the need is going to happen. And they need to have access to those forms to verify, in order to start taking care of those things on in your behalf at your death. Now, granted, an executor handles things at your death, so that person's going to need to know where those documents are and to start taking care of those things. Make sure final debts are paid. So that person needs to know prior to your death who they are, and you need to make sure it's a person you can trust
Yeah,
and is capable of doing it.
awesome. Well, that concludes the questions for now. We still do have some time if you would like to submit your questions. While any last minute questions come in, I would like to share just a little bit about Myeloma Coach program. So Diahanna is a myeloma coach, part of our Myeloma Crowd Coach program, and she specializes in financial advice and things like that. There are other coaches who specialize in other things such as smoldering myeloma, or there are caregiver coaches, or simply, if you're going to have a stem cell transplant and you want to talk to somebody who's been through that. That's what our Myeloma Coach program is for. It is not in any way something that you pay for. It is something that is part of our nonprofit, so you can access those coaches for free. They volunteer their time. You can sign up to be a coach if you have experiences that you want to share, or if you just feel the call to support somebody, or you can sign up to be a coach. To be coached, excuse me, in a variety of topics. You can search topics, you can search area, you can meet with the coach however best fits your needs. So that can be accessed at www.myelomacoach.org. That is something that I can include also as a resource in our follow-up email that I send to you 24 to 48 hours after the event has completed. It looks
I
like,
wanted every and if
go
I
ahead.
could, I want everyone to know that I'm a financial coach, and one of the big areas I help people in is helping them find financial resources to make sure copays, deductibles, if they're looking for financial help outside of your regular loans and things. I try to help them find resources, make sure they can stay on treatment.
That's great.
So it's not just these estate issues and things like that. It's a lot.
Right. Yeah, I know that we've had a couple people reach out to us recently that you've helped them with Revlimid
Mm-hmm.
copays, and that has been a huge blessing for them. So thank you for what you do, Diahanna, and we hope that all who are watching today can access her. Again, her contact information is in the slides that will be shared with you in the follow-up email. No more questions, so let's conclude. Let me pull up the slides. Maybe. Let's see. As I stated before, I am not a tech person, so thank you for your patience. Our next Myeloma Financial Coach meeting will be on March 2nd, 2021 at 11 a.m. Mountain, 1 p.m. Eastern. This is going to be a special presentation for veterans and families of veterans. Please spread the word in your social media and support groups so that myeloma veteran patients who served our country can be aware of programs and financial resources available to them. And yes, you can also join this meeting even if you are not a veteran. You may be interested in other events that we have upcoming in our myeloma community program. Tomorrow, on February 3rd, we will be having our Fitness for Myeloma chapter session, and the topic is going to be yoga, chair yoga. No matter your range of flexibility or mobility, come see how chair yoga can benefit you. We have a multiple myeloma patient who is a certified yoga teacher. He is going to be teaching a sample chair yoga class, so that is going to be exciting. On Wednesday, February 10th at 11 a.m. is our Utah Myeloma Support Group. We will be discussing how to start our year stress-free. If you are not from Utah, but you are interested in a regional support group in your geographical area, please contact us. We are happy to explore and create new chapters and support groups. On Thursday, February 11th at 5 p.m. Mountain, 7 p.m. Eastern, is our Myeloma Caregiver Chapter event. This will be our first Myeloma Caregiver Chapter event. It will be our launch of this chapter, and we will be discussing how to prevent caregiver burnout. The link to sign up for those events is listed on this slide. I will also include it, as well as the slides, in a follow-up email that we'll send along with this recording 24 to 48 hours after the completion of this event. Another big thank you to our sponsors, Bristol Myers Squibb, Amgen Oncology, Karyopharm Therapeutics, and Oncopeptides. Thank you again for sharing this virtual time with us, and thank you for helping us grow this myeloma community. We appreciate each one of you, and we hope to see you next time. So thank you.
Thank you.